Hello everyone. In this part of the tutorial series, we are going to use Substance Painter to create textures and materials for our gravestone. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So as always, I have on my second monitor my reference images, and this is going to be super helpful for when I'm trying to think about the colors and some detail that I want to add to aid me in my texturing phase. So we're going to use Substance Painter, the same one that we used in the last video to bake our materials. Um, yeah, I will say right off the bat, for this asset, I am going to rely pretty heavily on mask generators. Um, but really, when you're doing texturing work, I think you kind of want to use generators, but you do want to break free of them and like do some kind of hand painted detail for sure, and that will help separate your textures from the crowd. And I think those the artists who do take the texturing beyond just like throwing generators on are the ones who are creating really awesome artwork. So we're going to keep it simple for this video since it's more of an introductory type video, but just know that when you're creating assets, you should really dive deeper into the texturing phase and create to create awesome textures. You'll have to break out beyond the generators, but they're super helpful. And that's kind of one of the powerful tools in Substance Painter, so we are going to utilize them. So the first thing I want to mention is we are going to do a 2K resolution just for our textures, and that's fine. The cool thing about Substance Painter is that we can actually dynamically change the resolution, which is nice because in Photoshop, if I was painting a map at 1K resolution and I wanted to upscale it, it wouldn't upscale. Because it's a raster-based program, and that painted information is just going to get pixelated and blurry when you try to scale it out. But we actually, because Substance Painter, it can get pretty dense and the file size can get large. Sometimes you'll need to work at a lower resolution and then upscale it to preview what it's going to look like when you kick out that texture. So here, texture set settings, you can see here, this is where we have those maps we baked from the last video. So that's where those live. We'll probably come back into here to add another channel. But by default, we have our base color, our height, our roughness, our metallic, and our normal channel. And these are all channels we can paint information in. And so these are essentially channels, or they're their own texture maps, right? So we can paint information in each texture or channel, and then all together they come together to create the material. We could... So if we go to layers, this is where we're actually going to build our material. And another thing is, I want to show display settings. So by default, we have our environment map, and if I hold Alt, if I hold Control, Shift, sorry. If we hold Shift and right click, we can rotate that environment, and you can see the environment is rotating. So that's super helpful. We can also switch the environment map, and a lot of the times I will advise people to maybe start with, by default it uses the panorama one, but sometimes it's nice to use one of these studio ones because it's a more flat environment map. So this one only has like one white light. So sometimes this is helpful for gauging your materials. Because if we have an environment that has color information, you can see that default color is white, but just because the environment, that environment I just picked has a warmer lighting, well, that's going to influence how I'm painting my diffuse map, for example. So that's something I would keep in mind. Usually the panorama is fine as long as you know it's leaning a bit toward blue. But one of my go-tos is a studio environment just because I know the light is relatively flat, so I know I'm getting like a more true representation of the colors I'm painting, especially when it comes time to do the diffuse. The thing that's lacking in some of these studios, not all of them, is interesting reflections. So if I add a fill layer, I'll call this one base color. I will admit I am really, really bad about naming my layers in Substance Painter, and usually it's a hot mess, but I'll try to name them as I go for this tutorial. So if we turn the metallic up, and so here you can see what the reflections are doing. I just set that material to be more metallic, and if I go to something like this, I'm getting more interesting reflections, and you can see that environment map in the background. So that's kind of the sacrifice, but there are some studio lights where you can get like more product kind of rendering with the studio ones. But I think that's enough about the environment map. Just know I'll probably use this one just to kind of gauge it, and then we can always see what it looks like in a different environment. So let's go ahead and collapse that, and I want it there. All right, so let's look at this base color. So what I did, and I'll step back and just create a new one. What I did is I hit this icon right here to add a fill layer. And my approach to texturing in Substance Painter is I'll always rely on these kind of fill layers and then add masks to reveal or hide that layer. Because each layer in Substance Painter, you can think about as a material. And sometimes I will stack different layers and it's not a true material. But technically, this layer has a base color, height, roughness, metallic, and normal channel. And you can see that in the properties tab down here, color, height, rough, metal, normal. And we can change these, and it fills this whole layer with this information. Height we won't see right now. We get something like that, maybe. So you can see how we're doing a material. And what I will do is, that will be like my base layer, right? And what I can do is, maybe we make this one blue. Maybe it's not a metal. Maybe it's not as rough too. It's more flat. Let's do a darker blue. And then what I can do is I can add different masks, or but basically all a mask is black. In the mask, black conceals, white reveals. So if I add a black mask, it's going to hide everything in this blue layer that I created, revealing the red underneath. So what I'm going to do is, in this mask, I'll add a paint layer, and then in my brush, I'm painting white. So I'm adding white to that mask, which is revealing that blue paint layer. And this is my approach. Again, this is my go-to approach when I'm creating things, because it can be really, really fun and an easy way to get intricate materials. So now if I go back here, the cool thing about this workflow too is like, I don't want it to be blue anymore. I want it to be green. Well, it's a fill layer, so we just go back to the actual fill layer and we can adjust these settings. So now that I have this difference here, if I change the height, you can see what the height is going to do. It was kind of a soft brush, so it's not the best example. But what it's doing is it's trying to fake the height a little bit. And maybe I do want this green to be metal. So yeah, we can always go back into these layers, which is awesome. Super helpful to tweak and fine tune. So you're not painting green down and then you have to repaint green, right? You're relying on these fill layers to create your differences. So that's kind of the basic gist of what I'm going to be doing, and it can get complicated. We are going to start using the blending modes. So for example, let's set this to like blue. each layer does have a blending mode and a transparency. So if that green, I can dial down the green. But it's only dialing down the green because I'm in the base color channel. So if I dial the green, or I'll keep the green, I'll change the blending mode to something else. So just like in Photoshop, we have all these different blending modes. And you're not going to see anything too interesting with this one, but just know that we have blending modes we can play with, the opacity, and the important thing to note is this isn't for the layer as a whole, these two settings. This is just for the base channel of that layer. So if I switch this to roughness now, and I take, I'm in the green layer, and I dial the roughness down, now it's pulling the roughness from the layer below it because I essentially turned off the roughness in this this layer by taking the opacity down of the roughness channel. Okay, that's the basics, the very basics of how the textures and the different channels and work together to create materials in Substance Painter. All right, so now I'm going to delete that. Let's add a new fill layer, and I'll call this one base color. I am looking at my reference, and I have this Gravestone. It's probably going to lean more toward gray, but it definitely has this blue hue to it. So in the base color, I can actually, I'll bring this here. Well, actually, it will go behind. I have this image on my other monitor, and what I can do is I'll click base color, and what we can do is we can try to find that color, get it as close as possible, which is fine. We also have this eyedropper tool, and if I click and hold it, I can actually sample out colors outside of Substance Painter, which is super convenient. So right now I'm trying to find a color I like off of my reference sheet. And I really want something a bit more blue. We'll start with this, and I guess I'll tweak it from here. So I think blue, we can drop the value a little bit, make it a bit more saturated. There we go. So this is going to be my base color. I don't really like this environment because it's so dark. Let's do this one. There we go. So I'm just getting some more lighting in there. Okay. So right now, my roughness, it looks like it is kind of too reflective. So I'm going to increase the roughness, start diffusing that material, but I'll have it be a little bit reflective. Metallic, this is stone, so I'm just going to keep the metallic value at 0 and height at 0. Let's kind of dial this color in a bit more. Want it less blue, darker in value, I think. And maybe a bit more blue. So yeah, that's looking good. Okay, go back to my roughness. And I still think it's too reflective, so I'm just bringing the roughness up a bit more. All right, so we have that base color. So I do want to bring out the edge wear a bit and draw attention to that to get the more stylized look that I have in my reference. So I am going to create another fill layer. And then I'll just make it red. I'll turn off the height, roughness, metalness, and normal for now, because I'm only focusing on the color right now. And I'll call this one like Edge 1. And I'll add a black mask, so it's hiding that. Then let's just go back here to base color so I can see. So what we can do is I can create a generator, and basically smart masks use these generators. So after I add the black mask, I'll right click, add generator, click this icon right here in the properties, and I'll add, don't know if I want metal. Well, we can tweak it. I'll click this metal edge worn. Let's see if they have a different one by default. Yeah, I'll click this metal edge worn. And you can see what it's doing is it's revealing our edge 1 layer on the edges. So in here, I can play with some settings. I kind of want this to be a little bit bigger. Grunge amount, I don't want as much. Grunge scale, we can maybe take it up a little bit. Curvature weight. So right now, I'm just want this to be a little bit thicker, because I'm gonna go in with another layer on top to like do another level to this. There we go. That's what I want to do. Okay. Grunge scale, bring that. That's fine. Wear level. Okay. Something like that's not looking too bad. I don't want a whole lot of this higher frequency detail. Okay. Let's roll with this. Okay, so now once I have this, I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to go into my base color, and I'm going to sample this color. And I'll set this to screen. So if I throw stuff underneath it, it will be screened. Okay, this, I don't really like what this color is doing, so I'm going to drop the value a bit, because I want it to be subtle. I do, but you can see it's subtle, but I'm noticing this nice change in the base color. Something I also might want to do is mess with the roughness to make the roughness channel more interesting. So this is my base color. I'm just hitting C on the keyboard, and I can cycle through. So here's my roughness. So I'll enable roughness on my edge 1 layer. And maybe it will be a little bit brighter, because those edges are kind of getting worn, so the polish is going away. So as I make it the roughness more lighter in value, it's making it more rough, which is diffusing the light, which is blurring the reflections. So I think that's pretty subtle, but it's cool. So I'll hit M to come back to this. We can also rotate our light if need be. Shouldn't notice too much, but that's looking cool. Alright, so now what we can do is, if you want to bring up the edge even more at a finer point, we can either duplicate this. I'm just going to make a new fill layer, turn off the roughness and all the other channels except for color. I'll set it to screen. And I'll add a black mask. And I am going to add a generator. Oh, that's the... I should did a curvature generator for the other one. Let's come back to this. Hold on. Let's close that. I can hide this mask, and I'm going to right click, and I'll add a a new generator and make this one the curvature one. I think that's what I want it for this base one. That looks way better. I'm starting to get that pit detail, right, that I kind of sculpted on the surface. So that's the one I was looking for. So we can either delete this or, yeah, I'll just delete it. So now for the edge, well, let's call this one edge 2. Add a generator, and we'll do that metal one because that one does a pretty good job of getting the edges. So I'll take the wear level down a lot. I like what that's doing. I do want the grunge amount. We could start breaking it up a little bit more by increasing the grunge amount. Edge smoothness. Kind of want it a little bit smoothed. Let's take that grunge amount down. I still want it to be kind of solid lines for the most part to get that more stylized look. And now I can drop the opacity, and you can see that's looking really cool. Same thing, I'll hit C. Oops. Cycle to roughness, and I think I want these to be even rougher because these are the corners, the parts of the corners that are really messed up. So I'll go back to that fill, enable roughness. And so if I hit this black, you can just see it's going to make those like super reflective. So you just have to be careful. Like when you add new things, when you only want to affect the color, just go ahead and turn the other ones off and then come back and add in the channels as you want to tweak them. It's kind of, because like that would not be a very good result if that was black. So in my roughness channel, these are going to be pretty rough. So I'll make those lighter in value. Right. So, I mean, that's already looking pretty darn cool, what we have so far. Maybe I want to bring out, no, let's keep it subtle. You might want to push things too much, but honestly, sometimes just stacking up a lot of subtle effects is going to be the way to go. I think that's good. Maybe we can bring this out a bit more. And if we wanted to, because right now it's just pure, there's no saturation. So let's get into the blues a little bit. But I don't really like that. I'll be super subtle with how much blue I add in. Alright, so the next thing I think I want to do is get into the creases and add some darkness in there. So what we can do is, again, just create a new fill layer. I'll call this one like AO. And I'll make this red. And what I can do is I could make another generator and tweak those settings. But a lot of these smart masks are actually in a good spot. A good starting spot if you kind of know what they do. So I am looking for something that's going to affect the ambient occlusion. So there's cavity rust, that might be a good base. Sand might be a good one. Let's see what sand does. So I'll just drag it. And let's play with this. This generator. So you can see it's a mask editor. So I'm just tweaking the mask a little bit. So again, I'm just going through the mask and playing with some settings. This kind of super high frequency detail, I'm not really a fan of. I'm like, that's not too bad. Ambient occlusion. Can blur it. Oh, there we go. And yeah, I'm just going through here. Oops, saving. Playing with some of these settings to kind of get the look I want. So let's see if this can work for us. Let's go ahead and dial in the base color. I think for the roughness, these are in the cracks and crevices, so I don't want them to be as reflected as our base color. So I'll keep the roughness, turn off the other ones, keep base color as well. I think having it brighter. There we go. Hit M. Let's get this base color down. And I do want it to, since this is overall, that looks kind of cool, but since this is overall a cool tone in the base colors, I want a warmer feel. Something like this. Maybe drop the saturation a little bit more. We can do something like that. Don't like the mask generator, but I do like what the colors are doing. So we can continue to play with this. I think I'm just going to hide that one right now and see if I can find one I like more. Let's try Cavi Rust. I don't think this is going to... Yeah, that's kind of the same as what I was getting before. Let's edit it. There we go. I think I just needed to take the global contrast down a bit. Yeah, so this is kind of the look I was going for. Just get some subtle, almost like dust or something going on in the creases. And we really did push this to be a warmer color. Just because that contrast is helpful. And darken the value. And I'm gonna rotate my light. Let's check it. That's looking pretty cool. So I don't think I need... Yeah, this old one's pretty bad, so I'm gonna delete the old one. I like what that's doing. What else can we do? If we wanted to, we can add some more subtle variation. Like this style is in of itself in the right track, I would say. But maybe we want to add a little bit more detail in our height map or our bump map, normal map. So what I'm going to do is I'll create a new fill layer. And in my grunge or procedurals, just check for stone. Let's see if we can bring some material back. So in here, I will add a black mask. And actually, I need to add a bitmap mask. I'll just pick this AO1. And then it creates this fill for the mask. And then I can drag our texture here. And what I want to do is just add some variation. Here's the scale, yeah. Maybe this is too extreme. And again, you got to keep in mind the style you're going for. This might be too much. So now what I'll do is I'll turn off color, height. I'll keep roughness on, and you can see it's like doing this cool thing. It's playing with the lighting, but it's too extreme, so dial it back a lot. And it's very subtle, but I think this is going to go a long way. You can see what it's doing. Maybe these pieces are, yeah, if they're darker, they're going to be more reflective than our base. So maybe this is like the remainder of the polish that was left on. And I don't like the scale, I think. So I'm going to go into grunge. Maybe add a little bit more. But you can see it's subtle, but I think it's gonna really go a long way. And really, what ends up happening a lot of the times is there is some playing back and forth with like going into your render engine, so Marmoset, Toolbag, or Unreal, testing stuff out and coming back into Substance Painter and tweaking it. So let's see what happens if we add a little bit of height information. That's giving a little bit more texture to it. So depending on the style you're going for, that could work. I think it reads pretty well from a distance. You could play with the scale a little bit, and I'm actually going to take it down 0.008, and we'll be more subtle with it. And do we want to tweak the color? We could bring some color back. I don't think we want to do that though. It looks sloppy, even if we play with like the blending mode or something. I don't think. That one's actually not too bad if we set it to like that, and then we can even drop the opacity. If I hit C, this is what it looks like in our roughness. Something I do want though is I kind of want this edge roughness to trump this roughness. So maybe we bring this one underneath the edge details. Yeah, I think that's going to help a lot actually. So hit M. Yeah, just bringing that layer underneath so the edge details supersede the roughness. And then let's look at what our base color looks like. Looks pretty cool. And yeah, that color detail is really subtle. And we'll call this one like stone detail. Oh man, even if we crank this base color up, it's not existent essentially. Do something like that. All right, so that's looking cool. We started getting some texture to it, you know, it's starting to feel a little bit more like stone. We do have a more stylized edge wear. And looking at it, I'm still kind of going back and forth to this one. Just dial it back a smidge. But yeah, I think we're getting some good results. So something else. This is actually looking pretty good. Let's add another fill layer, and I'm gonna do this one like black, and turn off roughness and metalness. And so we're seeing the metalness and roughness from the layers below. So I'll call this one like pit detail or something like that. What I want to do with this is I'm going to I'll add a black mask, but instead of using a mask, I'll add a paint layer. And I don't have my tablet out right now, Actually, let's go ahead and get it. It's going to be a little bit smoother to paint, and I'll have pressure sensitivity. Stroke opacity down. So what I want to do is just paint some detail so it's a little bit darker here. There we go. And if I hit X, since I'm in the map, that switches the brush to black. And I think I do want this detail underneath my edges. Or, looks like it needs to be between edge 1 and 2. I'm okay if it goes... So this is why it's like, even though I'm really relying heavily on generators just for the sake of time, I still would want to go in and paint some of this detail in to bring some of these spots out. Oops. And you can paint in UV space as well, but this should be good. Get some variation. And you can really see as well while I'm doing this, like just that sculpted detail we did in the previous videos really helps us when it comes time to texture. It can give us some really cool and interesting results. Okay. So now what I'll do is I might set this to multiply. Play with the color a bit. And if it's too intense, we can drop it down a little bit. But yeah, that looks cool. Something else I want to do is in my reference, I noticed like I painted this darker than the rest of the gravestone, so let's kind of get that in here. So I'll add a new fill layer. We'll make it black, turn off height, roughness, metalness, and normal. And I'll call this one like RIP color, just so it's something I know what to read. We'll put this under the, I think, both edge wares as well. Yeah, we'll put it under both. Add a black mask to hide it, and we'll add a new paint layer in our mask. This one I'll use my mouse since I want it to be 100%. So if I hold shift and tap, it creates a straight line. Or, yeah. And so this is a nice way to do that. And once you get a good border, just fill it in with like your tablet. So I want to separate this kind of from that ambient occlusion color. So let's set this to like a dark blue, just to give it a little bit more interest and to match our reference. So I'll desaturate it, maybe take the value down. Yeah, I think that's getting good. Maybe we can play with the blending mode like oops. It's my super secret technique for blending modes. Just cycle through them all. That looks cool. I don't even know if it's doing that much. And stone detail. Put this below stone detail. Okay, so that's looking pretty cool. And like I said, the good thing about this workflow is I can always come back to this base layer and I can tweak it. So if you think it's too blue, we can desaturate it. You might have to go through and change some of the edgeware ones, but that's not too bad. I do think it is too saturated. Let's just desaturate it a little bit more. And I think I'll go back to that AO layer and I'll pull a little bit more red in. Now it looks too desaturated in the base layer. There we go. So yeah, and overall we have a really decent texture going on for it. One last finishing touch I do want to do is I want to, in my reference, I noticed something cool. I have like this green gradient coming up that could represent moss or something. So I do want to represent that in my material. As I continue to play with this base color, right? Alright, here we go. Okay. So, what am I gonna do? Let's create a new layer. I'll just create it on top for now. Make it green. Turn off. Well, we'll probably come back and change the roughness and whatnot, but I'll turn that all off right now. Actually, let's increase the roughness and just do it flat so it's easier to see. And in my smart mask, I should have one that's like dirt. Am I just completely missing it? Oh, ground dirt. That's why. So I'm going to plug this in. And we'll call this one like moss. This layer moss. So you can already see how, oh, that looks so cool. So again, we can go into the mask editor and we can dial it in. So maybe it's too sharp. We can increase the blur. We can play with the effect of it growing up. Play with the contrast. Play with the texture a bit. Texture 2 we can play with. But yeah, honestly, something like that looks pretty cool. Let's go into this layer and let's just play with some things. So height, maybe I give it a little bit of height so it looks more like moss. Ooh, but now I see it's doing all this. So, let's go back into that generator. This one. Oh, I'm just gonna hide this grunge map. So let me Control Z. take this grunge map 31 off. It looks like it added that. Now I'll play with the height. There we go. That's cool. And I do want to see edge detail, I think. So let's see what happens if I bring this and put it underneath even above there. See if I put it above. It's alright. That actually doesn't look too bad. I definitely can't put this moss under edge. I guess I could. What if I bring it above my both edge layers? And I set it to a different blending mode. I don't think that's good. Ooh, that looks kind of cool though. But it doesn't look good right there. So can't use it. Oh well. Set this back to normal. I think we'll put it under here as well, so we get that darker. We'll just do that. And I'll continue to tweak this to like that. Saturate it. We can even drop the opacity of the color a little bit. And maybe that height information's too high. But it reads pretty well from here. Alright, let's see what this looks like when I change up the environment. If I go panorama. So yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Again, I think overall it might be too shiny. We might need to increase the roughness throughout. I'm gonna leave it, but just looking at it, it's something that we might want to play with. The roughness. But that looks cool. So one last thing I do want to show you guys is like, I think this is okay, but like this really caught my attention. I was like, oh, maybe I could do something with this. What we could do is we could like use the curvature map to drive like a mass generator to get that, to highlight the RIP. But I think what I want to do instead is something different. I think I want his eyes to go. I'm kind of a big fan of glowy eyes. So what we need to do is enable the emissive channel though. So if I go to texture set settings, I'll add a new channel and I will add the emissive channel and go back to my layers. I'll add a new fill layer. Notice how now we have a new emissive slot. So let's go ahead and hide all the other ones, and I'll just take the emissive, make it like blue. And so we get this. Just like we've been doing, we want to add a black mask to hide it, and then we'll add a paint. Excuse me. Add a paint in our mask, paint layer in our mask, and then we can like reveal where it shows up. So something else I should mention is we do have a symmetry function, and that's right here. There we go. Turn symmetry off. And I think we can boost the emissive. There we go. So you can play with the emissive strength, which is cool. I think we can enable things like glare or glare. So yeah, that's pretty cool. We don't really need depth of field or anything else. I think the glare is just cool to show off the emissive. Can you dial it back though? I think you have to go back here and dial it back a bit. So yeah, so that's how we can create our materials and textures. So the next step is actually exporting your maps correctly for whatever render engine you're going to take your asset in. And I will show you guys like what I get when I take it into either Marmoset or Unreal, but I'm not going to show that process. Instead, I'm going to link 2 videos that goes over the process of exporting your maps from Substance Painter into Marmoset Toolbag or Unreal Engine 4. So make sure you check those out, and those will be kind of the unofficial conclusion to this tutorial series. But I think I'm going to leave it here for now. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this tutorial series. We've spent a lot of time creating this asset, but hopefully it provides a good overview so you have a better understanding of the whole pipeline. Remember to check out those 2 videos I'm going to link. And yeah, thank you for sitting through this tutorial series. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and continue making awesome artwork. See you guys in the next video.